Every artificial virtual system has no capability of manipulating the Noo-Time Continuum structures. One day I thought about this stuff, and I made a conclusion that crossing various kinds of plants might be already considered basically the origins of formation new civilizations and of modeling new forms by us. I asserted having taken an example of a nectarine. Before there was a peach and a plum. Trying to make a new kind, new form, we crossed the forms never been crossed before. We make special conditions, form the new environment, and get new forms of manifestation by that. If the environment where the crossing experiment is held is enabling, if there are some energy informational interrelations which are intended for not a new type of pervulярность, but the intended form of appearance, so our experiment is successful. We will practice such experiments in more and more complex variants as our evolutionary improvement will proceed, as we will comprehend how the macrocosmos works. We already operate with information on genetic level. Progressive complexity of such experiments will bring to gradual modeling the more complex forms. We will turn from crossing to any genetic modeling and further will study any new technologies by means of which we will make the next step on the path of our self-development. Entry into corresponding continuums will be given to the results of our experiments. As a matter of fact, the forms like us will emerge in those continuums and will consider themselves alone. In fact, they have already emerged. This is us. In this case, this is us. And those who evolved conditionally earlier are already in higher dimensional diapasons of space-time. They are those who conducted such experiments, having begun from peaches, and advanced in technologies of those experiments by supergenetic inventions. In other words, is all this process duvulert, progressive? Am I right? Yes, we should remember that we manipulate energy information. We carry the structures of Noo-Time Continuum, NVK, to the structures of space-time continuum, PVK. If there was no opportunity to bind the PVK structures with the NVK structures, so whatever virtually we would create, it would be very limited and incapable of the further development on the level of collective subconsciousness, supraconsciousness, and so on. Meaning we can create internet and fill it with all that we know, all possible interrelations would carry out there, but that would be not the same as in NVK. Internet couldn't extend beyond the limits of a computer program. The Internet program is provided by the presence of the knowledge which the certain collective consciousness has. We put a program on, put algorithms on it. These algorithms have certain limits of their appearance. It's over. There its development finishes. What we create artificially can't extend beyond the limits of knowledges and comprehension of the level of development, which we have a possibility to realize. You said that few thousand years ago, the involvement of protoforms of different kinds was corrected in our forms, didn't you? It might be observed from different points of view. I have just extended your question with that there were diverse cases of their involvement. That process occurred not at once. The most significant correction happened about 12,000 years ago. But the basis for that correction was laid about 70,000, 75,000 years ago. Before that, different people had existed for certain purposes. 500,000 years ago, there were certain forms which were used later in order for formation of human of the modern type. When Iissiidiology didn't exist, you were narrating about that process and saying that the progressive setup of Iissiidi centers, which we have now, had proceeded at those times. It turns out that this process took place certainly. Was it carried out by some wave means, not mechanically? Exactly. Creators regulators play the role of those creators, the curators of our genome. Simultaneously, spatiomально, hiddenly, they influence our modern reality, our forms, our focus dynamics from their own fluxovate civilizations. Yes, there is the central guidance being implemented through only our fluxovate forms. The regulatory genes from our DNA aren't the same as creators' regulators. The first are just self-consciousness forms. Creators' regulators manifest themselves through the information inherent to our collective subconsciousness and facilitate resonational selection of the information that is related to only our luvomический type of development. Further, creators-interpretators come into effect as well as genomic creators, which represent all kinds of protoforms. The latter play the subordinate role in our nouveau formotype. But it is not so subordinate to obey the commands of creators-curators, observative creators. There was the discussion on the central managing of the human form creation. It turns that we, as the creators' regulators, who are present on fluxovate levels, are those creators who made it all. Just at that moment, it wasn't possible to link us to the Earth, because the fluxovate development levels being talked by us about never meant our development on the Earth. There, on the fourth, fifth dimensional levels, are the Venus planetary creature, the Martian planetary creature, Proserpine, and so forth. As you said, many civilizations took part in that process. Then our materialization here is the result of work of the more qualitative levels, fourth, fifth dimensional diapason, for certain purposes. The creation of physical forms wasn't like any invisible substance made it all, although originally the manipulation occurred just in this way. But it all was created with assistance of various forms, not only nouveau formotypes, but with other formotypes too. Anunnakis are also the variants of creativity of us. Us in the role of fluxovate creators. Anunnakis were also among those who arrived there and arranged something on the earth. On the fluxovate level, the notion civilization rather differs from what we all imagine now.